I describe myself, I was a wine mom in my early years of motherhood. Not only did I share the mommy needs wine memes, I created some. So I was all in because I believed this narrative that we need wine as a crutch because this is really hard. And it wasn't until I realized this wasn't a crutch.
You were twisted through seven.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Soberful podcast. And I'm joined by Celeste Yvonne. Hi Celeste.
Hi Veronica, so good to see you.
Nice to see you. And I know Celeste in person because she lives in Reno, which is near where I used to live. I've now moved to the deep south. But we've met for lunch and met at different events. And I'm really excited because Celeste has a book coming out and I think you're all going to love it. And it's called It's Not About the Wine. So we were just chatting that I'd moved and we're sort of like renting until we buy somewhere. So I packed all my books, everything's in storage, and I packed up all my books in storage. But I made sure I had your book in the things I wanted to unpack. So I had it because I knew I was interviewing you, and I've read bits of it and it's really wonderful. How do you feel? It's a long journey getting to this point, isn't it?
It's wild. I mean, I've been working on this book since before the pandemic. So this has been such a massive undertaking. And I feel like so much has changed to help build the book and make it what it is today. But also, I mean, it feels like birthing a baby times 3 because it's 3 times as long.
Yeah, I mean, there's the writing and the research and then the editing and then it comes out and then it's the marketing. It's years. Yeah, the same. I started writing my book in 2018 and I'm still doing stuff around it 5 years later. So it is. Anyway, congratulations. Your PR person reached out to me. I'm like, I know Celeste. I already want to get her on. Like, you don't need to ask twice because I really want to talk about this. And it's called It's Not About the Wine, The Loaded Truth About Mommy Wine Culture. And I know if you follow Celeste on Instagram, and she'll give you her details about that later, this is something she talks about a lot. It's something that needs to be talked about a lot. It's definitely got out of control. Why don't you, let's start at the beginning. Like, what is mommy wine culture, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's an important distinction to make here, too. When I define mommy wine culture, I'm defining it as the social narrative that playfully jokes or implies that moms need alcohol to cope with the challenges of raising children. So to be clear, I'm not talking about someone who's a mother who happens to be drinking wine. That's not where my definition of mommy wine culture. It really is the implications of a narrative where we are blaming our kids for why we need to drink.
I love that, and thank you for defining it, because we're not saying that every parent who drinks wine is problematic or whatever. There is definitely a culture, and I was just looking at a store the other day. How many tea towels and stickers and greeting cards have this kind of message on there? It's everywhere, right?
It's everywhere. I mean, you can find the t-shirt at Target now. I have seen the most absurd things because people send them to me now. They know that this is my platform. Somebody yesterday sent me that you can buy, it's called Mom Water. And it's basically hard seltzer, but different names like Karen and Sophia
I've seen that
for the mom water. Just the levels this has gone is pretty. It's shocking.
It is, and it's just really another version of mother's little helper. This is what they were in the 60s. They were giving Valium to mothers, and I think there's something about. Let's just, we just need to keep them contained, kind of keep them from not fully realizing the crappy hand that certainly American mothers have been given. Like, let's just anesthetize them and then hopefully they'll shut up and go away. I just feel like it's another version of that.
I so agree. When you look at the history that, mommy's little helper, and then when the alcohol industry really focused on women and started pinkwashing the alcohol industry, it's such a great way to keep women quiet, numbed out, and small.
Yeah. Keep them small.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? And because I do love that you fully admit that really appealed to you and you really kind of embraced it and came out the other side. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I would say I describe myself. I was a wine mom in my early years of motherhood. Not only did I share the Mommy Needs Wine memes, I created some. So I was all in because I believed this narrative that we need wine as a crutch because this is really hard. And it wasn't until I realized this wasn't a crutch, this was self-sabotage, because I was drinking to the level where I would wake up with hangovers. I would wake up in a worse position than I needed to be. And I was not the mother I wanted to be for my children, that I quit drinking. And it wasn't until I saw the other side of it that I started to realize the harm of this message, the ways I used it as justification to drink, and to drink at my anger, my frustration, my rage, a lot of mom rage. And when I started kind of compiling thoughts about what this book was going to be about, it absolutely changed over the course of the years as I've been sober. But one of the things that really hit me hard was the mental load of motherhood. And why aren't we talking more about the rise in women's drinking in connection with the mental load of motherhood and just how hard it is? It's hard to be a mother in general, but in modern society, it feels really hard with, we have so little support postpartum. It feels like once the baby's born, we kind of get tossed a little bit to the side when it comes to mental health and physical health from our doctors, from our loved ones. Then I think about the impossible parenting standards we have in today's society, where we have hustle culture. We have this concept of you should do it all alone and you should do it well. And it feels like we really set ourselves up to fail with this idea or this ideation that we should do this alone. Screw the village. We should be doing it. And when you ask for help, you're showing weakness. Then I think about when it comes to the mental load, the unequal distribution of household labor. And while more women than ever are returning to work after having a baby, the expectation by many families is still a very traditional one that women are in charge of the household labor. And that needs to change. And it is changing a little bit, but not nearly as quickly as it needs to be. Whereas women are still doing twice as much of the household work at home and watching and raising the children twice as much. So I see all these things and I look at the increase in women's drinking and I say no wonder.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is a direct relationship with that. It's interesting. Obviously, I'm from the UK and Europe has much better support for women and mothers and families. I want to say England's not great. I mean, it's better than America. I have a friend who has had a baby in Sweden, and she says when you get pregnant in Sweden, you get put into a group of mums who are all due like the same time that you are, and like you go through your life with those moms. Like there's this, you have a support group, you have your classes together, and then they have like this phenomenal parental leave, like 2 years or something. It's like incredible. And I come to America, I mean, we do have paid parental leave in England. And I come to America and I'm just like, I remember when I was pregnant with my first son and I was in groups and women were talking about going back to work full time when they were 2 weeks. And I felt like my whole body, like, I just felt that's not right. That's not right. That's not, there is no way that is the right thing for that infant. That
It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
You hear about countries like Sweden, they're doing it right. I mean, that's a built-in village right there.
100%, yeah.
And that is probably the thing we are most missing as women in America. We need that built-in village. We should not be having to do this alone. Motherhood should not be a one-person job. And yet we set them up to feel like it is. In my own personal experience, I took 6 weeks off. It was unpaid leave. And that my work told me directly was by the grace of them, because they did not have to do that at all. They could have given me 0 leave, but just from the grace of their heart, they were going to let me take those 6 weeks off and still have a job when I came back. And that's fairly common. In fact, 6 weeks is a privilege compared to a lot of other mothers in America, where I looked at some of the stats, and a huge percentage take an average of 10 days leave before returning to work. And when you hear about the science of attachment theory and how babies need their parents those early days, it's heartbreaking. Like, we are setting ourselves up to fail right from the get-go. And then you look at paternity leave, which is not only extremely rare to be offered, but most men don't take it. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because there's a stigma that if they take it, they are not fully in on their work. It's not encouraged by their employers. And so they don't take that. So again, we are putting in this expectation that the woman is in charge of raising this baby. And so women feel exhausted, they're drained, they're lonely, and they feel extremely undervalued and undersupported. When I look at all that and I see my own experience, no wonder I was drinking more than ever. It's a heartbreaking reality, but I also don't know how we can set ourselves up to do better when these are the messages we're giving mothers.
When did you, I assume, did you have like a group, like your mom friends, and that you would all drink wine with? Is that how it worked?
I think when I became a mother, a lot of friendships just transitioned anyway, because you have a group of friends who are moms, a group of friends who are not. And for me, my whole goal was trying to make new mom friends. And for me, a lot of the time, not only was alcohol everywhere anyway, but it seemed like a really great way to kind of let our guard down and find a reason to connect, like connecting over mimosas, connecting over a glass of wine while your children are playing felt easy and fun, and a way to do multiple things at once. Like, you can relax, you can socialize, and you can also give your kid some socialization time. It's a win-win as far as I was concerned. But of course, we also know the implications can be very dangerous when you are somebody like me who is a gray area drinker.
When did it all come to a head, and how did you stop?
Yeah, for me, I had 2 children. I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was drinking more than I was comfortable with, to the point where more days than not, I would wake up with, if not a little headache, a regular hangover. And I knew that I was not putting my best foot forward as a mother. In fact, it was at the point where I did not enjoy motherhood. I did not feel good about this. And I was really relying on that alcohol at 5 o'clock as that kind of mental release from what felt like pent-up energy all day, pent-up anxiety all day. But I had little convincing moments throughout my early years in motherhood. I feel like it all really came to a head the fall before I quit. We were seeing behavioral issues with my 3-year-old, and I went to the doctor's office, And I told him what was going on. I said, we're seeing behavior issues at his daycare. What can we do? And the doctor said, well, he's only 3 and these are small behavioral issues. We're just going to wait and see. Let's just take the wait and see approach. And me being me, I was like, no, that's not good enough. I need something to take away right now. And so the doctor looked at me and he said, children like this need consistency, routine, and structure to thrive. And I don't think he was saying that to attack me. I mean, he didn't know me very well, but it felt like a punch in the gut because
Wow.
I did not feel like through my drinking or through waking up in the morning, not feeling fully present, that I was giving my child any of those 3. And I think that was the first time I really realized my alcohol use was and is affecting people around me. So that was really kind of the big gut punch I needed to start rethinking how I was going to do this. And I wound up quitting alcohol about a month later.
And what was that like?
It was really hard. And in fact, if I were to do it all over again, I would have done it so different because I quit cold turkey. I just quit. I only told my mom and my husband, and I decided I was just going to white knuckle it because I didn't feel like I was an alcoholic, so I wouldn't go to meetings. But I also knew I couldn't keep drinking. But I didn't want anybody to know how just how bad it had gotten and how much guilt and shame I was carrying from my alcohol use. So I kept it all in and I just kept it as my little secret. And I just thought my life would now look like this life of deprivation. I had lost my adulting card and I was now going to be stuck at the kids' table for the rest of my life. It was a really ugly way to live for the first couple months. And it wasn't until I started getting curious around my sobriety, around what opportunities were available to me in sobriety, trying to meet new people, trying to form new connections, and ultimately finding community, that I was really able to thrive in my sobriety. But those early months were brutal and a lot harder than they needed to be. I wish I had done some things differently, especially finding a community sooner, because I didn't have to experience it alone, and I did.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, because that's my universal advice is don't do it alone. It's really, really hard. How did your circle of wine mom friends respond?
Yeah, and this was part of something else I wish I had done differently. I was so afraid in those early months of anybody knowing. I was afraid if somebody knew that I wasn't drinking, they would assume, I and put a label on me. And I didn't know what I was doing yet. What if I go back to drinking in 6 months and they've established this label on me? So I tried to keep it a secret. I tried to pretend I was drinking when I was in social settings, and it made everything harder. It genuinely made things harder. I have this one experience where I went to a play date and the mother immediately popped open a bottle of champagne. I had never met this woman before. She didn't know me at all. She popped open a bottle of champagne and she offered me and the other women there on the play date mimosas. And I was like a deer in headlights. I just didn't know how to respond. I was like, should I tell her? Should I not tell her? I want to tell her so she doesn't offer it to me, but I don't want to tell her because I want to be invited to more mommy play dates and I'm trying to make friends. So I said, no, thank you. I'm good right now. But the problem with that was she asked me again 15 minutes later. And then she asked me again 15 minutes later. And ultimately, when I did tell her at the end, I'm like, no, thanks. I don't drink. And I left it at that. She didn't ask me any follow-up questions. In fact, we wound up becoming friends after that. It would have been so much easier if I just told her, I'm not drinking, but thank you. And the amount of judgment I presumed would come with my sobriety never amounted to this definition or this thought I had in my head. And again, something I definitely would have done differently in early sobriety.
So interesting. I've noticed, because I was 10 years sober when I became a mum, and that was like a whole new world. And the same thing, I wanted to make friends. And I began to notice there's always a group of mums whose play dates are around alcohol. And I never get invited. And I'm going to tell you, I'm pretty sure they didn't know who I am or what I did. It's just, they could pick up on it somehow. Like the school that we were at before, there was a group of mums who partied. Not only were they would drink, but like they would regularly go out, and they were nice to me, but I was never invited to that group. And then I would find mom, and I also didn't care, because that's not, I'm not interested in that. And I always found great moms who didn't drink or hardly drank. Really interestingly, and I'm kind of interested in this, my kids, because my kids have just started a new school, and I'm really excited to find out who your friends are going to be, because you pick friends and then their moms become my friend. And I'm really excited who my new friend is going to be through you. And they seem to gravitate, and they've done it more than once, maybe 4 or 5 times. They're really good friends, their families don't drink or barely drink. We've had Mormon friends, another couple just don't drink. And I'm like, that's interesting. There's got to be something to that.
There's definitely some psychology to that.
Right.
I've no doubt.
It's happened more than once. It's happened too many times for it to just be like, oh, that's a coincidence. Yeah, there's got to be. Yeah, but I've kind of been, again, because I was sober 10 years when I had kids. I mean, I've been to a lot of birthday parties for young kids where I felt that the main objective here is for parents to be able to drink. And it's kind of like, oh, we know where our kids are. They're all kind of the same place. There's some balloons and cake, and have a drink. And I don't know if it's always been like that, but I feel like that has grown a lot. Do you think the same?
I absolutely think that has grown. I grew up in the U.S. And I had a father who was an alcoholic, yet I've never seen a birthday party where the parents were consuming a lot of alcohol. And yet I was part of that problem for my children's early years. And of course, I see it everywhere now. I have one story where we were at a trampoline park it was like a kid's 5th birthday. And we were all there, and the mother starts pouring champagne into the orange juice cups and passing it around to the parents. Like, this is for mommy juice. And of course, a child sees this orange juice on a tray and grabs one when no one's looking and gets so sick, so incredibly sick. And, it's just a horrible accident. But it just made me think about how normalized drinking at our kids' birthday parties has come or is becoming. And I do think that is a newer phenomenon. Sure, there's probably people who have been doing it forever, but I think there's more of an expectation that if I'm going to be at your birthday party as an adult, I expect there to be alcohol for me.
Yeah, I think it is. And yeah, I also wonder what else, who's driving, and if there's water nearby, all of that kind of stuff. I've been around that and felt a bit anxious that nobody's properly supervising. And again, it's not to say that there's some parents who, it's quite appropriate for them to enjoy a glass of wine or a beer. It's so crept into parenting as a parenting aid. So, okay, how did you start your sober journey? You said you did it on your own at the beginning and it was really hard. Like, how many years are you sober now? I can't remember.
I'm 5.5.
Oh, well done. Yeah. How does that feel?
It feels so good. And I just feel like it has been a journey in every sense, because it's always changing and you're always growing. And I feel like a lot of the things that my why for why I'm sober has completely evolved over time. But it's also been so gratifying. Like I do think about my early years drinking and the way I show up for my kids now and just how grateful I am. Like I am not a perfect mother by any means. I will never pretend to be. But the fact that I took alcohol off the table so I can do it a little bit better every day, it feels good. Sometimes I go to bed at night and I think I was a really crappy parent today, but I'm still winning because I didn't drink. And sometimes that's the best thing I can do for myself and my kids.
What are your big takeaways from your 5.5 years that you would like other mothers to know about?
When the pandemic hit, it was such a game changer for everybody, but especially moms in so many ways. And I think about people in recovery at that time and how recovery communities shut down overnight, whereas liquor stores remained open. Not only remained open, but they expanded their services to now include drive-thrus and delivery offerings. It was a really challenging time to be in recovery. When Emily Paulson started the Sober Mom Squad, that was my first experience with a community. And it wasn't just a community of sober people, it was a community of sober moms. So we really got to see and talk to each other as people who, our kids just came home. Now we're learning how to homeschool. In all these ways, it felt like the entire world was changing around us, and all we had right now was each other. We were the only consistency we had at such a earth-shaking, earth-shattering time in the world. And that was such a powerful moment for me to explore and dig in deeper to what does community mean and what can it look like, not just for recovery, but for motherhood too. So I think about that a lot because that not only changed my experience in recovery and sobriety, but it changed how I wanted to show up for other mothers in recovery too.
Well, I mean, how do we change this? Have you got any thoughts on this? Because I'm seeing some stuff come out there, but I just feel that this is just the big, and I see it everywhere. Like, how do you think we change this? Because it's not aimed at dads.
Are you talking about the mental load of motherhood or mommy wine culture?
No, I mean the culture, this kind of messaging. Like, I mean, hopefully your book will begin to kind of, but I just feel like we're still, how do we begin to change this?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come at different things because right now it is this perfect storm of expectations, pressures, and lack of systemic support. So it's going to come at different levels. Systemically, we do need radical changes to how we approach rules and systems in place to care for mothers, whether it be through healthcare, whether it be through affordable childcare. I mean, these are things that need to change for all mothers to improve our quality of life. But of course, that's never going to happen overnight. That's something we will constantly have to work towards. But in the meantime, I think one of the things that we can do today is change our communication. If we are in a traditional partnership with our spouses around distribution of labor at home. I mean, that will change the mental load immediately. It takes hard conversations. It takes a lot of discomfort, but we don't know, and our partners don't know what they don't know. And if we are not communicating with them, the invisible work that we are putting in that is unacknowledged and unrecognized, then they won't know what they don't see. So I think that is one of the harder parts of this that has to happen in any relationship, not just for women in recovery. This is for anyone in a relationship who feels like they are overburdened by the mental load of motherhood.
I mean, I think it's a massive cultural shift that needs to happen in America. I don't see us being particularly close to that, to be honest. I feel that, I mean, I think there's some movement towards better parental leave. I have a few friends who work in some progressive companies that are getting pretty decent maternal and paternal. But we still have, affordable childcare is one of the big things. Like, I could so get behind that for any politician who brought that in. Again, I have a client in Denmark, and they have universal full-time childcare at age 1, and both parents work, and that's how it is in Denmark. And she said, here's the thing, childcare is seen as it's a very prestigious job. It's well paid. There's men, it's not just women doing it. And it's really valued and rated. It's not like that. Just whole mindset and perception is completely different. But yeah, even just starting there, what's your hope for this book? That women who are, the mom who's picking it up is beginning to question her drinking. What do you hope she gets from it?
Yeah, I mean, my hope for the book is to show mothers how to cope with some of our bigger and biggest stressors without alcohol. I mean, that's my goal. Truly, the book is to help mothers and anyone who feels stuck in the alcohol trap, but to understand that this is a lot bigger than alcohol. Like, a lot of the mental load and the problems we're experiencing as mothers, it's an all-consuming thing, and we're using alcohol because it feels like we have no other support. We've got no other systems in place. Our partners don't understand or on board. And if we don't make changes at various levels, nothing's going to change. And we'll just increase the resentment and frustration, and ultimately using alcohol or drugs to self-medicate.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I want to it's not about the wine. It's so much more about that. The stopping drinking is one of the first things we have to do. There's a lot more underneath it. When you look back where you are now, can I ask, you said when you went with your three-year-old for behavioral problems, did getting sober help with that?
100%. And I'll tell you why. Wow. It's not so much that his behavior changed, but as we were able to see the behavioral issues that continued in the future, people would not be able to gaslight me by saying it was my fault. I think if I was still drinking during that year and the following years, as his behavioral issues continued to get worse, I would have very much sucked it up as, this is all my fault. It's because I'm drinking too much. And because I had the mental clarity, I was able to see what was happening, that this was bigger things at play than bad parenting, and that we needed to take this very seriously. And we did. And now, he was diagnosed as neurodivergent. And now we have such a great plan in place. We have a whole support team in place. But it all started with me having the presence of mind to be like, I can see things clearly. And these were things I could not have been able to see otherwise.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, we want to fully show up for our kids, right? And we deserve time off and to kick back and relax and to have fun. And we deserve all of those things, because that's really, I can't bear this kind of like selfless motherhood, right? I just think that's a mother without a self, is what you're saying. Like, we need all of those things, and our children deserve us being fully present. And we can be fully present when we are able to take time out and relax and have fun and do all of those kind of things as well.
I agree. I do not want my kids to see me as this martyr, this person who gave up everything to be their mom. And when I think about how I want to show up for my children, there's so many ways, but one way is I want to show up for them as someone who is present. I would never encourage my children to use alcohol as a coping mechanism, but how could I live that lifestyle as they grow up and expect them to live a different life? It was just very hypocritical. So one way that I get to do that for my children is by living a life that's present, that I'm seeing everything, I'm there, I'm ingrained in it, but also I'm showing up in a way that I would wish for them as well.
Yeah. I think that's the ultimate question is, do you want your children to drink the same way you do? And that always stops people in their tracks. You know, and it's not just about showing up for them, it's about that you show up for yourself first, because you deserve it and you're worth it. And I think that's the message that comes across in your writing and your work. Available everywhere to buy books, Amazon, all the places?
Yes, anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold, please check it out. It's a really good read. It's very honest. Celeste writes really well and kind of cuts right to what's going on. Anyone you know, any mums you know who are struggling, I think they'd really benefit from that book. Where else can people find you, Celeste?
Yeah, you can find me on social media at the Ultimate Mom Challenge. I try to post different stuff there and have fun too. Like, it's not all serious.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. I'm really excited your book. Well done. I think it's a really important conversation, and I hope it gets out there as many places as possible. So
thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you, Celeste. And we'd love to know what you think about the episode. Please comment on social media when you see the posts. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Soberful podcast. Thanks so much for listening.